Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, my YouTube channel. I am your host, the Mighty Bjorn, and today for you I have the 49th episode of Community Steel. Now, I do have a episode 50 lined up. I haven't decided if I'm going to do anything special for it yet. I'm thinking about it. The gears currently, as I'm recording this video, is still turning if I'm going to do some type of giveaway or something, and what I'm going to do. So there you go. There's that really quick. So anyway, let's dive into episode 49. And right now we have the Caro P480 from Matty07 ITA. And this weighs in at 22 tons. And it has a 75 millimeter gun with 165 millimeters of penetration. And it's for the late war period. And I actually rather like this one. I think it's kind of cool. It's kind of like a... if you will, like a late model Italian Panzer IV, if you want to go that route. Because, well, a Caro is a Italian tank. Of course, I'm pretty sure this one's completely fictional, but hey, I like the concept of the idea. Now, that being said, the gun's okay. It's not the greatest for late war, but it does do the trick for the most part. The accuracy is actually rather good, even though I'm actually personally shit. And the mobility is actually rather good. I found the mobility to be perfect, actually, for a medium tank of this time period. I like the look of the vehicle. I like how he really did the engine deck. The skirting looks good. Honestly, the extra armor plating around the turret looks great. You know, nice spaced armor there. Things of that nature. And honestly, I think it's a pretty good tank, in my opinion. The only thing that's really a downfall with this thing is actually the armor. The armor's mostly flat and it's not very thick, so it won't bounce many shots. Armor's just not reliable, but that's neither here nor there. It does work out for this vehicle. And it also helps keep the vehicle light, because in certain situations where you need lots of tanks, you have lots of tanks. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. And the next one I have here is the T20 Medium from Obey the Lion. This is actually one of the M26 Pershing prototype tanks, if you will. This weighs in at 25 tons. It has the 76 millimeter main gun with 128 millimeters of penetration, and it's for the mid-war period. Now, once again, my opinion about the vehicle is it needs more penetration, but that's, you know, neither here nor there. Realistically, the biggest flaw of this vehicle is the armor is extremely unreliable. I was actually getting shot at here by light tanks, and the armor was not bouncing shots at all. So really abysmal armor, to be honest. And the mobility, while okay, it's just okay. It's pretty mediocre mobility. That being said, though, vehicle model-wise for in Sprocket, with what we currently have in Sprocket, I think the vehicle model actually looks pretty good. So it's not bad, except for the armor's rather bad. And the next one, though, that I have from Obey the Lion is the A43 Black Prince. So we went from having no armor to a fuck ton of armor. However, this thing's mobility is abysmal. I couldn't get it over, I think it was like 10.5 kmh. It weighs in at 46.4 tons. It's armed with a 76 millimeter gun with 157 millimeters of penetration, which kind of had me scratching my head. I would have anticipated more penetration out of this, and it is for the late war period. That being said, I didn't really have an issue with this vehicle. Like I said, I thought that the penetration would be better, honestly, when I started looking at the stats, and the penetration on the gun actually did do the trick. The mobility was the hardest thing to deal with, though. This thing is just, mobility is just really, really bad. That being said, though, it actually does look pretty good. It does actually look like a Black Prince, so I'll give them credit there for that. And, yeah, there's that one. The next one I have is the Fitchel Koning Jaeger from German Train. And this is essentially what happens when you build an elephant that it's open-topped and give it a different gun with gun mantlet. Yeah, it's kind of like combining a Nashorn and the Tiger P chassis. This weighs in at 60.27 tons. It's armed with a 125 millimeter main gun, which kind of surprises me. I probably would have went with the full 128 or just went with a 120 or something like that. And it's got 178 millimeters of penetration. It is for the late war period. And now one of the biggest problems with this vehicle is the mobility is just absolutely atrocious. Just horrible. It's okay driving forward, but any type of turning, forget about it. You lose a hell of a lot of speed. It takes forever to do any type of turning. The armor's actually held up fairly well, and this actually pretty reliably bounce shots, surprisingly, for being an open-topped tank destroyer. So I'll give credit there where credit's due. But yeah, you can see here I'm even having some mobility issues. Now that being said, too, the reload time on this gun is really bad. You know, if you miss a shot, you really paid for it. And that I actually ended up losing this mission, and that's why, because I missed like 2 shots, killed 2 tanks, and there was still a tank that crossed the finish line. So yeah, when it comes to gun reload speed, it's pretty horrible. And unfortunately, like, it would be okay if you were used to the vehicle, because then you can make it work. You know, it's kind of one of those I needed more time to actually catch what the shooting was like on this vehicle. But anyway, I think it's actually a rather cool idea that you kind of take a Nashorn and put it on a Tiger P chassis and kind of make like a pseudo Nashorn elephant type deal. So, yeah, it's pretty cool, I guess. I think so. The next one I have is the EBR M24 from Restore the Mouse. Mouse. This weighs in 11.67 tons. As you can see, actually rather good job on the EBR chassis. So what you have here is essentially you have an EBR chassis on top of with a M24 Chaffee turret, even though it's got a 76 millimeter gun instead of a 75 millimeter gun. It does have 140 millimeters of penetration for the late war period, and actually the mobility's not bad. The turning's kind of not the best, but it does work. And once you get this thing up and going, it does actually get up and go at a pretty good clip. The turret traverse is actually really good on this. I did notice that. The gun depression's actually rather good. Now, one thing at the end of the day, though, that kind of sucks about this is the armor's kind of bleh, but it's also a lightweight wheeled chassis with a lightweight light tank turret. So I really wasn't expecting anything in the realm of armor. That being said, this would actually make a fairly good pseudo tank destroyer or reconnaissance car, which is pretty much what kind of role this vehicle would fit in, as some kind of reconnaissance patrol car, if you will. But either ways, I think it's actually rather good looking. I also like how he did the 50 cal there. I'm not sure if he did that in Blender or if that was something that he messed with in Sprocket itself. Of course, Sprocket does have a 50 cal machine gun, so not 100% sure. The Chaffee turret shaping, design, and things of that nature looks great. Did a really good job there. And overall, great looking vehicle. And it's not really bad for what it is. The next vehicle I have here is the HGS 110-5 from Herr Gunter. And this weighs in at 5.46 tons, armed with a 40 millimeter gun, and has 50 millimeters of penetration for the interwar period. Now, this vehicle here, you got to think of it as a tankette, and actually, as a tankette goes, it's pretty good. The mobility for an interwar vehicle is actually rather good. I think the vehicle itself looks rather good. The gun doesn't do a bad job. There is certain targets that it would face up against in this time period that it would struggle against. But the turret traverse is actually really good. The gun depression is really good. It's just, generally, it's an overall good vehicle. And surprisingly, for the most part, it wasn't like a one-shot kill type vehicle. That being said, I'm not sure what the AI is shooting at me, because this thing would definitely have problems with the APHE. Now, I like how he's actually got the interior actually modeled and actually has the gun modeled to look like a gun breech in the whole 9 yards. So he actually did, I feel he did a really great job on this vehicle. So if you're looking for a tankette, I think this is actually a really good option, folks. Now, the final vehicle from today is from Vladislav, and this is his TVP VZ52. And it weighs in at 41.28 tons. It's armed with a 100 millimeter main gun, and it's got 200 millimeters of penetration. Now, the first round here did not actually go the best for me. I actually got two round footage here from two different rounds. He does have a searchlight added on, so to me it felt more like a Cold War era vehicle. I believe it's actually supposed to be. I'm not really familiar with the VZ52. It is for the late war period though, but I think it is supposed to be more of a Cold War era tank. I do think the vehicle looks good. The gun for the most part is actually rather effective. 211 millimeters of pen is going to be pretty good against most vehicles. Although of course with some of the mechanics in Sprocket, it does fall short. Now the one thing I did find weird was its aiming point. The aiming point, usually for me, a lot of my vehicles, the aiming point is actually off to the left or the right a little bit. Here it's actually low. And it really threw me off here at points when using this because of it being low. Sometimes I wouldn't see it against the ground and I'd end up shooting the ground. So that did cause some problems in itself. I think if I was to get this vehicle, I would try to adjust the aiming point to be somewhere else. But either ways, I think the vehicle is good for the most part. I mean, the front of the turret, as long as you stay held down, will soak up shots. The hull, not so much. The mobility is actually rather good. It does got good gun depression. I did like the gun depression on this. It felt actually really good. As well as the turret traverse and elevation was actually really good on it too. So I think all in all, it's just an overall good vehicle. It felt more like a medium tank than say like a main battle tank or a heavy tank, but that's neither here nor there. As like I said, it just does the trick. And I think actually the gun shield he modeled is actually pretty cool too. Anyway, folks, that's going to wrap up today's episode of Community Steel. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. Thank you very much for tuning in, and have yourself a wonderful day.